Hey, what's up? It's Chai, and today I'm going to do a quick review on the X-Men Tornado V2 3x3. But most importantly, in today's video, I'm going to explain why I think this puzzle changes the cubing meta forever. Before I continue, I wanted to let you guys know that this review and my content is sponsored by thecubicle.com, and if you use code CHAI at checkout, you get to save on your order and help support my content in the future. First, let's get some basic information out of the way. It measures 55 millimeters across its side, and it also weighs in at 72 grams. It has 5 different screw depth settings, 5 different spring compression settings, and also 5 different magnetic strength settings. The way that X-Men markets their adjustment system design is that there's 125 different possible settings, and that any cuber can find a setting of their preference. And quickly, I just wanted to explain what each of these settings change on the puzzle. So for screw depth, the tighter that you have the setting, the less corner cutting you're going to have. And then the looser that you have the setting on, the more corner cutting you're going to have. The way that it translates on this puzzle is that the lower the number, the tighter the setting. Next, for spring compression, the tighter that you have the setting, the slower the puzzle is going to be. And then the looser that you have the setting, the faster the puzzle is going to be. And just like with the screw depth, the lower the number is, the tighter the setup is going to be. Lastly, for the magnetic strength, it's pretty self-explanatory. On the puzzle, it's going to clearly indicate which one is going to be the weakest magnetic strength and which one is going to be the strongest magnetic strength for the puzzle. In between these two magnetic strength settings are 3 more mid-range settings so that you, the user, can find the magnetic strength of your preference. In order to change any of the settings on this puzzle, you do have to use Qi's proprietary tool, for lack of a better term. It does have a flathead screwdriver for you to change your magnetic strength. It also has a regular screwdriver if you need to use anything else. And this little teeth 2-wing thingy is what you use in order to change the spring compression and the screw depth. What you want to do is you want to go counterclockwise to change the screw depth, and then you want to go clockwise for the spring compression. In order to reset to the lowest setting once again, all you have to do is keep spinning in the direction you want to go until it resets. To give you guys context for the rest of this review, I'm going to tell you guys the settings that I have my puzzle set on. I have the 2nd screw depth setting, I have the 5th spring compression setting, and I have the 2nd weakest magnetic strength setting. Also, because I'm a narcissist, I'm just going to call the 252 setup the Chai setup. Finally, moving on to the performance of the puzzle, which I'm sure you guys have all been waiting on. Basically, it is super quiet, super clean, extremely responsive. It does whatever you want it to do, and it is very, very quick yet controllable. For me, in terms of the performance metrics, like the corner cutting, the speed, and the stability of the puzzle, all check out really well. There are other people who have reviewed the puzzle that mentioned that the corner cutting does not do enough for their turning style, but for me, I haven't found that to be an issue at all. In fact, I had issues with reverse corner cutting on the Gen 11M Pro, but that really didn't stop me from maining that puzzle for a while. The lubes that I chose to set up this puzzle with was Max Command and Max Fleet on the pieces and tracks. I didn't lube the core for this puzzle just because the core was completely packed in together, and there was no way I couldn't break the puzzle if I wanted to get to the core. The result of my setup has led to a puzzle that feels extremely soft and quiet. I don't know how else to explain how much it feels like a combination of the Tengyun V1, the Tengyun V2, and the GAN X. It's pretty insane. It actually makes me feel like my fingers are squishing like an entire loaf of bread. I don't really know if that makes sense at all, but that's what it feels like to me. Also, if you're a reuser or if you're a heavy M-slice user like myself, you'll find that these M-slices on this puzzle is extremely satisfying and some of the best performance on the market. I don't know if anyone else has had issues with this, but the Gen 11M Pro, I find that does not have really good M-slices. However, I should admit that if you have a really, really strong magnetic strength setting, that might influence your opinion on that. Something else I wanted to point out in terms of the performance and how I feel about it is because it's so lightweight at just 72 grams, yet the plastic and the integrity of the build for this puzzle is so sound, it makes the puzzle feel like whatever I needed to do, it does. It just feels like whenever I need to do a turn, it's effortless, and it feels like it's never going to kind of flop out of my hands. A lot of people experience that with the Tengyun line, and a lot of people experience that with the GAN line, I would say, up until the GAN XS probably. So in a lot of ways, even though this puzzle relates to those puzzles in terms of feel, the stability of this puzzle is more so on par with Qi's other lineups like the Valks and such, and probably, for example, Moyu's lines of puzzles as well. This leads to my final thoughts on this puzzle and really why I decided to make this video in the first place. I'm not really someone who cares too much about making puzzle reviews, but I wanted to point something out here. Right now, there are some really cheap alternatives to the cubing market, such as the RSUM 2020 and the Guhong version 4. However, some of the higher end puzzles like the Weilong WRM 2020, maybe the upcoming 2021, the GAN lineups, do I really need to mention how expensive some of those puzzles are? While they feel a slightly bit more premium, the price tag is hardly justifiable for it. And then because of the existence of the Moyu lineup and even Qi to an extent, the existence of their Valk Elite at $45, I think, that made it really difficult to even spend that sort of money, where if I go a little bit lower, I get a puzzle of almost the same performance in an RS3M, and where if I go slightly higher or a lot higher in price, I do get a little bit of a bump in terms of the performance. Now, personally for me, as someone who's a sponsoree for a cube store and someone who's just a cube enthusiast in general, this made it really difficult for me to recommend anything other than the $8, $9, $10 puzzles. Pretty much because you're gonna get 98, 99% of the performance compared to what else is available at the very top of the speed cubing market. But through that discrepancy in price, like I mentioned, there is a difference in performance and mainly a difference in the feel. There hasn't really been something that compares to the top speed cubes like the GAN 11M Pro, the Valk Elite, or the Weilong 2020 or 2019, whichever you want to talk about, in terms of the feel. I find that the cheaper alternatives are a little bit more hefty and a little bit more rigid, and they definitely don't provide that soft feel that a lot of people would associate with a premium puzzle. And that's what's personally grinded away at my cube preference, because even though I had the RS3M and the GAN 11M Pro, I would always end up using the GAN 11M Pro just because it just felt so much more premium, even though the performance was basically the same. But in that, there was approximately a $60 difference in price. And that's where I think the X-Man design Tornado changes the game. No longer do you have to price gouge to get something of equal value. No longer are you going to get that soft plush feel but need to spend $70 on. This cube comes in at $25. No longer are you going to have to pay a premium to have the ultimate adjustability in things that you find like the Valk Elite, in things that you find like the Weilong, in things like the GAN 11M Pro. This reminds me of a couple different puzzles. If you guys remember the YJ MGC Elite, fantastic puzzle. I thought it was the top of the line in terms of what's possible with adjustment systems. But the problem with that puzzle was that the performance simply wasn't there. The internal mechanism of that puzzle was just flawed. So just like how the adjustment reminds me of the YJ MGC Elite and how good it is, the price tag and the shift in the cubing market reminds me a lot of the Yushin 5x5. And when that released back in 2015, 2016, because of the existence of the Yushin 5x5, Moyu had to completely blow up their marketing scheme and how they decided to sell their puzzles, because Yushin was selling a puzzle with the exact same performance, a very similar feel, but it was being sold for under $20, whereas other 5x5s are being sold for $40 plus at the time. So all of these are words, but that leads to the reason why I think the shift in the cubing meta has happened. No longer will I be recommending to people who are millionaires, who are billionaires, who basically have money to throw around. No longer will I recommend the GAN puzzle lines. Like, it's simply impossible for me to say, how could one possibly justify having that puzzle for whatever reason? When it was just the RS3M and the Guhong version 4, the Meilong M, and such like that, and the GAN, sure, I could understand, and I could probably recommend the GAN to some people in a specific market. But the X-Man Tornado V2 is simply too good, it's too similar, and it's too premium. It's amazing. The shift in the cubing meta is that this cube is going to make GAN obsolete if GAN doesn't change how they sell their puzzles. if they're gonna continue selling puzzles at such a premium price, they gotta make sure that they release things that make the cube inherently different, in a way that the adjustment is different, in a way that the performance is different. But no longer is it possible to even consider GAN as a brand, as a reputable brand with this puzzle in existence. A lot of people associate GAN with other tech companies, and specifically a lot of people associate them with Apple, but in a sense they are not even close, because the difference between GAN and the other products that are available and the other brands that are available is negligible, if not non-existent, especially after what's available now with the X-Men Tornado. It's not even a difference of the user experience with the UI and like Mac OS versus Windows 10. It's simply negligible. Right now, every cuber worth their salt and their mom has a GAN puzzle, specifically probably the GAN 11M Pro, and that's fine. But for the cubers coming up, they're gonna see this puzzle as a turning point, just like the Yushin 5x5, of what's possible with the prices that are being put on these puzzles. I want to go back to the days where I could spend less than $30 and get the best cube on the market, you know what I mean? Now, obviously, I believe that the X-Men Tornado V2 is the best 3x3 in the market, and that's a biased opinion, but I don't think it's unnecessarily biased to say that this puzzle will single-handedly change how cubes are going to be retailed now. I think from here on out, every single brand and company is going to be releasing a 3x3 puzzle to beat and compete against the X-Men Tornado. Like, the first one that we're going to start with is, you guys are going to have to take a look at the Weilong WRM 2021 that probably doesn't have any adjustment features or diversity that the X-Men doesn't, but it's going to be related all to the feel and the structural integrity of the puzzle. But if that cube comes out at $35, for example, could I really recommend that one? Probably not, because this one's $25. I'm excited to see 3x3 cube prices drop in the future. I'm a little bit optimistic in that sense, but I want to give a huge thank you to X-Man Design for making this puzzle. This changes the game.